I have to tell you what I was going to do to all of you, but then I decided it would be really mean. Is it the Mandela effect? Is that how we say it? So I have this exact same outfit in pink, and I've been walking around all day. And I went back to my room and I put the pink one on, and I was like, that would be so cruel, and pretend like I didn't have this one on. So I changed my mind, but I thought it was funny. I am so excited to be here and, leave it to the Glastonbury Symposium to bring up the rear with the death girl. And, how appropriate is that? But I'm just super excited to be here. Believe it or not, this is my first time in Glastonbury. And what an experience it has been. And to see so many familiar faces and to meet new friends has just been absolutely wonderful. And this has also been an amazing kind of pilgrimage for us to get here, because if you wave, everybody, give a wave to my mom in the back. If you see the cute little lady, who's even cuter than that lady there, pushing around town, that's my mom, and quite an accomplishment. She's 93 years young and flew over from America all by herself. And we are currently making our way around the UK visiting the birthplaces of each one of her grandparents. How fun is that? Yeah, so it's just so magical. We've been having a ball. And so it's such a privilege for me to have her here. And so there's 3 generations of us at the symposium, because my youngest daughter is here, Jada, in the back. And so I think it's really, really fun and important that we share the generational aspects of this, that the knowledge that each of us is here for, the things that we are so interested and invested in keeping alive, that passes down. And, so I know my girls have been raised that way. I was raised in a less Glastonbury-esque way, but yet here we are, and here she is, and I think that's really cool. So my story begins in the womb, and Mother Dear there was 40 when she went and asked her doctor what could she expect in the change in life, and he pointed out to the waiting room to the lady holding a baby, and it was me. And so in the first trimester of my mother's pregnancy, my parents got a call to come in, and they found out that my mother had the German measles. And so back in the day, back in the 60s, this was kind of the kiss of death and not great news, and it's the last thing you wanted to hear. And so they were prepared that things weren't going to go well, and if the baby did make it in, that there would definitely be some serious challenges that they needed to go home and get their head around. And so my father was not only an American football coach, woohoo, but he was also a minister. And so we had an extraordinary series of events that happened in our family at that time. So you would think, being a Southern Baptist, that, we'd be praying and the angels would be coming in and all this. Well, my dad had what he called a celestial beings visit. And this was where it all began. So Dad very clearly described these 2 beings who came, and he did not call them angels. And they did not fit in his box of, what he had been raised to believe or what he was preaching to his congregations. And as a child, anytime I did anything, my dad would always go, don't worry about that now. Now stop crying, wipe your tears, you're promised. And it was just a thing that he used to say. And that became actually the title of my first book. And promised, because when my father had that visit, these 2 beings said to him, not only was I going to be okay, but that she is going to come in with some unusual gifts. Now, remember, this is far beyond, way before the days of ultrasound. And so they told my dad that I would be a girl and that I was going to come in and I was going to have some strange abilities. And then, poof, gone. So imagine that. So you're kind of like hanging out, waiting for the rest of the pregnancy to unfold, and then I arrive in the middle of a great big blizzard in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so Can you imagine, I've thought of this so many times, what it must have been like for my parents just kind of hanging around, and you're like, I wonder what they were talking about. You're like waiting for the shoe to drop, and like I'm 1, and then I'm 2, and then I'm 3. And it was age 4 when I got what I always refer to as the kitchen table talk. And my dad was a very big man, and he had that deep kind of southern voice, and he called me in and he sat me down. I was 4. And he said, Sugar, do you know the difference between alive and dead? Now I'm 4. And I was like, what a question to ask. Well, the reason that he asked the question was because I would spend all of my time talking about my very best friend, who was my mother's father, Dr. Garland Clark, who we called Judge. That was his nickname in our family. Interesting. And so Judge was my great pal, and he was there, and he was always with me at night, and we would take me on adventures and tell me these great stories, and he would talk to me about the gifts that we had and how we were to use them, how we were stewards, and how we were given something very special, and that I would eventually grow up to use these things. And with him being a medical doctor, it was very interesting because I had this keen knowledge as a very young child of the human body. I used to carry around a little doctor's kit. I'd like prep my dad for operations, with a butter knife and lotion, and I used to do strange things to my parents, and they just let me. And so but I knew a lot about the body. Well, that came from my grandfather, Judge. And so when Dad and Mom sit me down for this talk, and he's asking, do I know the difference between alive and dead? And I'm like, it turns out that all this time I'm chatting away about Judge and telling them things that, they knew were the case, but I was 4 years old, and how did I know? Because Judge had died when I was 1. And so Judge had been with me and is still with me to this day. We have a nightly meeting, and he pops up all around, and he's just a wonderful part of this adventure. And he made a great appearance 2 days ago that I thought was so much fun. And you can imagine for me, with this unusual life that I led, for my mom to be able to witness when the magic happens is just so special, and especially when it involves her father. And we were in Abertillery, Wales, and we were looking for the church where he had been christened, or his father-in-law had been christened. And we're going down this little laneway, and I was like, I wonder if this is it. Well, we turn the corner, and there sits a car with the reg, Dr. 55 Dad. And I was like, I think this is it, Mom. And so we've always had a very wonderful working relationship. And so he has worked in a guide-like capacity for me all of my life. So at the age of 4, my parents finally realized this is what they were talking about. Oh, she talks to dead people. So my father, being a minister, he got some perks out of that. I wrote a few eulogies in my time where the person had passed before they could share their wishes with my dad. And so we just dial them up. So imagine that. And really, really interesting as a child growing up with these unusual abilities. You dream things before they'd happen. And, I just knew things that I shouldn't know. And I was always a happy little kid, and I just no fear, always excited. I loved elderly people because I didn't see them as elderly, I saw them as elders. And I loved spending my time around the elders. I would prefer to spend my time in a nursing home than I would with my friends out playing. And so I loved the process of the transition. I was always fascinated with the death process, and it never scared me. And so you can imagine spending time, and I did, in nursing homes, sitting with people and watching that process take place. And what was so interesting was that it looked like fireworks. You know how you'd think, like, if somebody's life force is kind of dimming down, it's like a dimmer switch, and, the light is gently coming down before they make that transition. It looks nothing like that. At least for me, it doesn't. It looks like this beautiful fireworks display. Instead of winding down, it's amping up. So as the exit is being made out of the body, there's this fabulous display for all to see. And as the soul is exiting the body. So I loved watching that. So I guess the whole kind of angel of death gig was really appealing to me from an early age. But then I became a teenager. And as a teenager, and as I moved on to college, and you're trying to kind of fit in, and you're dreaming about, oh, Mrs. Jones is going to die on Tuesday, and she does. And, it's just one thing after the other. I became, when I went off to college, an insomniac. And I catnapped all through the day because I was, for the first time, living with a roommate, as you do in college. And I was like, what am I going to say? And this is a person who's sharing your space. And I had been raised because my father's, and it wasn't a fear, but concern was, I think, because he didn't know what he was dealing with, he didn't think anybody else was going to know how to deal with it. And so I think he was concerned more about exploitation and, misunderstanding. And so we never, ever talked about it. I could talk about it to mom and dad, but my own siblings didn't even know. And so there I am in college, and I'm catnapping so that I don't have to explain myself to my roommate. And, things would happen. I was really fun and the popular girl because I was a cheerleader. Imagine that. And we would write down the scores to the basketball games, and I would stick them in an envelope and put them in my underwear drawer. And then we'd go cheer at the game, and everybody would come back to my room, and we'd open the envelope, and it was like, oh, that's hilarious, And this was the extent of my service to humanity. And so the powers that be, and lo and behold, turns out I organized for myself, knowing that I was probably going to whoop it up and not be mature enough to grasp on and serve others with these gifts, that by the time I reached adulthood, that if I hadn't stepped into the role that I came here to play, that something was going to happen that was going to put me in that direction, because here I was steadily going this way, and I was an artist. I was a graphics major. I was the Gulf War was going on. I was doing design on TV, and then the manager of the station comes up and he said, you know what, we're going to put you in front of the camera. And I was like, what? And he's like, yes, we find that people with an anatomically large head do really well on the screen. And I'm like, he's like, look at Oprah. And I was like, are you kidding me? So that was a super exciting time. So, there I am running tapes for CNN during the Gulf War. So as you do in the South, if you are dating the person that you were dating in college, when you graduate college, your mother is now picking out your china patterns and your crystal and the silverware. And this is what we do in the South. And I'm like, this is kind of strange, because up north, the Yankees, they carry around a little purse and they get money. In the South, we get a swan sculpture in silver. So I was, in fact, dating my college sweetheart, and you carry on. And he was from Charleston, South Carolina, and so off I went to Charleston, South Carolina, with the intent of furthering this relationship, and so we would eventually marry, get engaged and be married and all, as you did in the South. Well, I end up working in this little sign company with my big fat college degrees. I thought it was so cool, and I had been on TV. And I thought I was going to get a job on a TV station. They were like, you've no experience whatsoever. No thanks. So long story short, my degrees and I get a job in a sign company. And this guy, Frank, and his wife, Teresa, did the best thing ever for me. He stuck a mop in my hand. And he said, learn a business from the bottom up. This will be the greatest gift I can give to you. And it was. Because, having done business all of my life, knowing and appreciating every person's role in a business and seeing, the micro and the macro aspect of what that means has served me well. And so we were having our Christmas party, and it was December 14th, 1991. So off I go in bright red Bermuda shorts and a Santa Claus t-shirt, and I had a beautiful Swarovski crystal jingle bell around my neck that my mother had given me to wear for the festive season. So there it was here, and I leave my apartment, and I get to an intersection of a major highway, Highway 17, if you've ever been in the South. And It's a big one, multiple lanes of traffic this way and this way. And so I come to this stoplight, and I wait, and I wait, and I wait. And, you know, I'm in those shorts and that T-shirt, and it's hot in South Carolina in December. And so I'm just listening to my music, minding my own business, and little do I know, I'm literally sitting at the metaphysical and metaphorical crossroads of my life, right there. And my light turns green, and so I start driving along. And remember, we're in America, so we're not on this side, we're on this side. The left side is the driver's side. So as I'm going across the lanes of traffic, these guys are stopping, these guys are stopping, these guys are stopping, and this car comes barreling towards me. And so I'm there, and I looked over, and it was in that moment that everything I knew to be true was turned on its ear. And so it was then that everything just started to slow down. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting ready to die. And that's exactly what it was like. It was this instant knowing, I've been there, I've done that, this is how it's going. And I'm like, And everything is creeping, and I mean creeping at a snail's pace, because I now have to decide if I am going to stay inside of the body and experience the impact and then die, or am I going to go out of the body and watch the impact and be dead? And how interesting is that I had the opportunity to make that choice? Because I can tell y'all, we didn't learn that in Sunday school in the Bible Belt. So I was like, I think option B. I'm going to choose option B because I feel like I've done this other one before. And so I made my choice. And that moment that I made my choice, everything sped back up again. So this man, 81 years old, runs through the red light, and he T-bones my car. In a T-bone impact, he drives directly into the driver's side door, and the car folds in half. And so I'm literally sitting here with a car in the left side of my body. But what's really interesting is that I'm not here watching, I'm here. I had chosen to exit my body before its death. Now let me say that to you again, and I want you to think about that for a second. I, me, the I am, the who is really me, left the meat suit before the impact. You are not that suit, period. I will argue that to the death with anybody. And this was incredible. It was incredible because now I'm becoming the witness to my own death. How cool is that? So what was super interesting at that moment was the sound. And this is why I work so much with frequency. This is why the healing work that I do is all vibrational and frequency based, because it was here that my interest was piqued and my understanding became profound, because there was this sound. So as that car is speeding up and it's moving towards me, I hear this sound. Now, I know I don't sound like it, but I live in Ireland, and Southern Ireland. And so I've been there for a long time, 23 years. And I love to play traditional Irish music. So I'm a bodhrán player, if you're familiar, any drummers out there. And so one of my favorite things is before a really good session is getting ready to start, my friend Greg, who's an Uilleann piper, and Uilleann means elbow in Irish. And is when Greg is starting to fill that little bag with air, and there's this beautiful drone. It's heavenly. I love it. And that's the closest sound I can give to you. That's what it sounded like. There was a drone, and it was beautiful, but it was low. And this is where it's really important to talk about when people talk about, like, hi, I'm really high vibe, or I'm low vibe. And I'm like, guys, come on. Do you know, high vibration and low vibration are all part of the same amazing dynamic circle of light. Okay, and both are equally necessary. It's the dichotomy of dark and light that we all experience here on planet Earth. So this low vibration, I figured in that moment, was what was keeping the me, the I am, the real Mary Helen, attached to the earth plane. So there's this low drone, and up I come and out of the body, and I am looking down, and boom, that T-bone is taking place. The car is spinning around. That sound is in the background. And I look over and I go, oh, there's Mim. And Mim was my college suite mate. Now, this is how kind of real time the whole dying gig is. Do you know? Super sacred. I'm like this, and I'm like, oh, Mimmy, do you know? And what was so strange in that moment was Mim was from Charleston. At that time, Charleston had about 350,000 citizens. I'm from Virginia, miles away. And Mim just happened to be at that stoplight at the time of my death. And so she was watching, and it was so bizarre because someone I had just spent 4 years in college with is now recognizing my car and going, oh, no, and recognizing me. And so I got the opportunity to be out of the body and feel what someone else was feeling as they witnessed my death. She's the one who had the attachment. It wasn't me. So one of my famous lines when I'm working with people who are there, they're holding vigil next to the person's bed, and sometimes that's totally appropriate and what the individual wants. And then there are those families where you've always got that one that wants to hijack the death. Anybody know anyone like that? Yeah, and there's a reason why she died when you went for coffee. So it was this really interesting experience because you're feeling everything that's happening around you, but you have no attachment to it. So I got the chance to watch her watch me and feel what she was feeling, and I had nothing. No, get me back in there. Oh, I was only 21. I was so cute back then, Things were still up, and I hadn't sagged yet, and it's fabulous, and none of that. Absolutely none of that. There was no pining away, no clamoring to get back into the body, no, I'm too young. It wasn't like that. I was just done, and it was okay. And so I'm hovering in this space, and I'm watching this, and I'm feeling her sense of loss, her sense of shock, her sense of horror. And I'm like, oh, I'm good. This is good. This feels familiar. And the best analogy that I can give you of what that moment feels like is if you've ever been out working in your garden and you're hot and you're sweaty and you're just disgusting, but you're so satisfied with what you've just done. And you walk in the back door and you peel off those clothes and you throw them down by the washing machine, and then you go have the best shower ever. And you're just bathing in this and you feel amazing. The last thing you're thinking about is the dirty clothes next to the washing machine. And this, my friends, is exactly what it feels like to be out of the body. I am conscious. I am aware. I know exactly who I've been, but I have no attachment to trying to get back into that car. It's like driving onto a car lock in an old banger, and you look back and you go, oh, we had such great times, but hello, and there's your new car waiting for you. It was that kind of sensation. There was absolutely no sense of Glastonbury magic. What was that? I was like, wouldn't that be cool if I just disappeared all of a sudden? There's your money's worth right there. I'll work on that. So there I am in that space, and we've now had that kind of realization that all is well and that I'm not supposed to try and get back in there at that moment. Everything is good. There was something else to come. So this is when the sound changes again. So this again is where this whole frequency thing comes into play. There's a sound and a light pattern in everything, and that's in life and in death. So what I like to call now the music of the spheres. Oh, y'all, I can't wait for you to hear it. I envy you to hear it and remember it again because it was amazing. And so there are these sounds that I can't replicate for you. I've never heard them. I've done everything that I can to try and master the frequencies available to me here in this plane, and it's very, very frustrating because it's like knowing algebra exists and all you've got is a little abacus. You know? And that's what it's like to experience that change in frequency. So everything starts speeding up. It starts getting louder. It starts getting more complex. It starts getting more beautiful. And so this is where that experience of moving from the attachment to the earth plane and moving into a new space, that's when it takes place. Now, a lot of people that I've been on the circuit with who've had experiences, they talk about the tunnel of light and that transition process. Well, my tunnel must have been so fast I missed it, because I was here 1 minute in the drone, and then I was here somewhere else with that fabulous music of the spheres around me. So the atmosphere, I have spent years and years and years trying to describe this to people, and it's impossible. The colors don't exist here. That feeling, that vibration, the closest thing. Have you ever heard a piece of music that just moves your soul? Oh, just that feeling where it's like love. Now just imagine that on steroids, amplified 100 million, thousand, zillion times, and you might get a smidge of what that's like, because you're now sitting in this vibration and you realize that you are that vibration. There's no separation. That sense of being a separate being from this is now gone. And here's what happened next. Oh yeah. Oh. How long did that go on? I have no idea. But it was a whole lot of oh yes. And it was wonderful. You know, it's like that sudden getting your memory back after it's been gone for a little while kind of sensation. It was incredible. And so the atmosphere that was around me now, because remember, I've gone from this bird's eye view of my own death into this space. And oh yeah, right before I left that space, and the car had come to a stop and people had begun to gather, and I'd had the experience of feeling what my roommate was feeling, or my sweet mate from college was feeling. There was a man who arrived in uniform who reached through. The windows had blown out. My head had gone through. My neck was already broken. The seat had folded up underneath me. And he gets there a little bit later, and he reaches in through the passenger side window and turns the keys so that the engine doesn't blow. Okay, I forgot about that guy. He's important later. So I'm now in that space, and all of that has taken place, and I'm having that shower where you have completely forgotten about the dirty clothes. And it was so incredible, because I realized in this space that space is different for everybody who experiences it. Because I've talked to enough people who've gone through the near-death experience and returned to tell the tale, who've had different experiences there. For some, it was a feeling of still being connected, still wanting to go back. I was pining away to go back, and I was like, I'm just one of those people, and I think your personality in life and death remains quite the same. I'm just happy to be wherever I am, y'all. And so I was like that there, and I was not trying to get back, but I know other people who have experiences in that space where they feel like, oh no, I wasn't finished. I never had that sensation of, oh no, I wasn't finished. So in that space and in this palpable atmosphere, I could touch the air around me. I was the air around me. That vibration was me. There was a sense of having shape and form with no body there. It was really neat. And so I stayed like that until such time that right in front of me, the atmosphere began to take shape. And so I am watching, and what was just this beautiful kind of caramel, opal, pearlescent kind of color swirling around starts to take form. And it was really interesting because the form took the shape of two older men. Now, how interesting is that? And I've been analyzed 1,000 times. Of course they were men. I liked elders, remember? And I really enjoyed the fact that these two were there and we had such an immediate rapport, but there was only one problem. Do you ever get that sensation where you've met somebody and you know you've met them? You know their name, but you can't remember? That's what it was like. This was me. And they know I don't know. We're in the other world. I don't know. And so they waited patiently. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh my gosh, these are my guardians. These are my guides. And again, that's not something you learn in the Bible Belt. And I am having this experience that is so counter to what I've been raised to believe. And so any kind of impressions of life after death that I could have developed in my earlier years, that theory goes out the window because it was absolutely nothing like that. There was no relatives waiting there. Jesus wasn't there. I walk up and I'm like, oh, what's your name again? And when I finally realized who they were, it was the best homecoming. And I realized these two in particular, there were more, and sometimes there's less. But we all have someone who's with us from dot one. Not just day one in this lifetime in this suit, but all of them. And that was the most wonderful, reassuring, you're never, ever, 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 ever alone. And even in your darkest moment, when you think nobody cares, when you think you've got nobody there, when the worst things that you can imagine have happened to you, where you sound like a country music record being played backwards, when life gets to that, don't ever forget there is someone there for all of us. And when you meet them again and you realize that connection, it is just glorious. And so I got to experience that wonderful reunion sensation with those who knew me from the dawn of time, from those who knew me for as long as I'd been a me. And it was amazing. And then I got to do the life review. That was perfect timing. Did you hear that? And then, so then I got to do the review. And so, yes, guys, there is a review. And it's awesome. So it's not something where you need to be worried about, no matter what you've done. And for me, and I know other people have different reports or accounts, but we're here to hear my story. So this is what happened to me. I am in this space with these two amazing beings surrounding me in the most incredible love you've ever experienced. And I'm like, we're eating popcorn and we're having a drink, and we're watching a 360-degree cinema. And that's exactly what it looked like. Here I am. And all the way around me, this is the most mind-blowing part that I will lay awake still sometimes at night thinking about. And it's been 30 years. I'm 4 years old at that kitchen table talk. I'm 12 years old, winning Living History Day dressed as P.T. Barnum. I'm 16 years old going in for my driver's license. I'm 18 years old being raped at a college party. I am 10 years old getting my first dog, Otto von Bismarck. 1, 2, and 3. English Bulldog. And all of this stuff is happening at the same time. Everything I thought I knew goes out the window in that moment. And I now have this deep, philosophical, amazing, far beyond my capacity to understanding of concurrent, of what it means to be experiencing multiple realities simultaneously. And this was crazy. And it's still something, like I said, that I will lay awake at night and it blows my mind. Because these things were happening. I was that at the same time I was this. At the same time I was this. At the same time I was this. Crazy. And so in this lifetime, when things get a little tough, when something's a little upsetting, when that oil bill was just a little too high, or if one of my kids does something, or I feel like I wasn't there, or whatever, these weird things we do, when you're getting a little older and you look in the mirror and goes, there's another wrinkle, there's some cellulite, and you're being self-abusive and all that kind of weird stuff that we do as human beings. I remember that moment. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm all of those things and none of those things at the exact same time. And let me tell you what, coming back into a body and living the remainder of my life with that knowledge has really changed the game for me. I really don't worry about an awful lot. I have to feign sometimes. My daughter called me with a little crisis from Ireland today, and I just was like, yep. And I know how hard it must be. She's like, would you please just get upset? And I'm like, over what? And so it has been, if you ask what has been the most difficult part about having had a near-death experience, it's trying to get upset about stuff. I have to actually, and I'm trying to give them the experience of, being human kids and having a mom and, I'm trying to show up, but I'm just like, okay, this is good. We're all good. Everything's okay. And they're like, and I'm like, yeah, that's it. And that is the biggest challenge for me. It's getting really worked up and really upset over stuff that traditionally I think people have a difficulty. How am I going to pay that bill? And I'm like, ooh, how am I going to pay that bill? And it's funny because my office manager, I'm a chiropractor by day. And my office manager said, do you know why you're never going to be wealthy? And I went, yeah, why? And she was like, you absolutely love the challenge of figuring out how you're going to make this happen. And it's true. That is part of my personality post-death, is I can't wait to figure out what's going to happen. And so, as always, when my mother is here for one of my talks, and she goes, well, what are you going to be talking about tonight? And I'm like, I don't know. And that makes her crazy. The idea of standing in front of an audience without notes, I could talk to y'all for 10 hours, I swear. Because, first of all, it's fresh. It's only 30 years ago. It's only 30 years ago. It's fresh. And when you are speaking from a place of this is what happened to me, and you don't have to remember any stories or how did that part go, or when it's coming from here, it's always truth. It's always the same story. So you don't have to worry about that. And then sometimes what happens is I will walk into a hall like this, and I'll just sit for a second, and I'll go, wow, that one's loud. Okay. And I'll know there is somebody or somebodies in this room who needs to hear X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, doo-doo-doo-doo, and I'll go back and I grab out that story, and I'll remember that. And that's what being a synergistic speaker is all about. Now, I know that is like some people's worst nightmare. They have nightmares about this, where they wake up, they're naked, and they walk into a hall not prepared to speak. Well, for me, I'm like, what are you going to talk about tonight? Well, Mom, this is what I'm talking about. And so there is nothing that is in this story that didn't happen and that's not going to happen to each and every one of you. That's where we connect. Each and every single one of you is going to go through that experience. I'm just going to do it twice in this suit, And I get to come up here and talk to people about what it was like to go through an experience like that. And it was fun. It was amazing. It was funny. It was heartbreaking. It was hurtful. It was, I don't go through a day of my life where I don't have issues with the physical ramifications of that, but I don't care. Because I wake up in the morning and the first question I ask myself every single day is the pain I am in right now, is it bigger than what I want to accomplish? And so far at age 53, it's not. And that day might come where it might be, and I'll just be writing things from my bed. But there's a lot of things now in life and the way that lessons unfold for each and every one of us that would be wasted on me. And that's an interesting part of my journey now. That requires this reaction. Yeah, I'm good. There's a lot of the difficulties, like worrying about money. You know what? It shows up when it's needed. I have 2 girls going through college right now, and I'm back working as a chiropractor 6 days a week, and I am loving every minute of it. And guess why? Because there was this little thing that happened a couple of years ago, if any of you all were paying attention. There was this pandemic that came along. And I'd been out on the circuit talking about what it was like to die for the last, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and I'd been out of the office. And there were people that I've been connected with since I moved to Ireland 23 years. There were babies in arms that are now, have their own kids. And so it had been a while since I'd been back in there. And so all of a sudden, this pandemic comes, and I get the chance to go back to work because I needed to, because I've got 2 girls to get through school. And I was so excited. I love every single minute of it. And so it's wasted on me to go, oh, no, I'm working. I'm menopausal, y'all. I'm working out every day, adjusting backs. I'd be this big if I wasn't, because I'd eat the cake every day. And so that's kind of, that's one of the interesting parts about having been dead, is being able to talk about experiences that most people look at as hardship. How am I going to do this? How am I going to afford this? How am I going to get it? And I'm like, how can I do this? It put the challenge back into life for me. And it was really, it was interesting because it was something I had to grow into. Because after that experience where you're like, oh my gosh, everything my family taught me to believe is just an illusion. And how I love them. And how I appreciate their version of reality. Because each and every one of us is living a unique version of reality that nobody else will ever have. How cool is that? And that's the necessity for you and for you and for you and for you and for me, is that each and every one of us get the chance. And that's why I love telling stories. It's why I love writing books. It's why I encourage anyone who's willing to put pen to paper or fingers to computer to write their story, because no one else has ever had your story, ever. Nor will they ever again. That's how special you are. And it's so incredible to be able to come back here with joy and with passion and with excitement. I was beat up. I broke everything. I'm deaf completely in my left ear, detached my retina, broke everything on this side of my body. Oh, you name it, I had it. I wasn't supposed to have children. I have 2. All sorts of things happened. And yet, I was able to find my way through that and come to a place of complete and utter gratitude where I could have any ailment known to man right now, and you wouldn't know it, because I'm not missing this. Imagine if I had a migraine. Do you know? Whatever. I've done many speeches with migraines, because it's part of having an old broken neck. But was the migraine bigger than the speech? Never. It never, ever has been. They're going to roll me up here in a hospital bed, and I will still be telling this story, because I realized in that moment that I am not this. This has been my vehicle, and I know there's probably no one in this room who doesn't have an understanding of that. That's what brings us collectively together, and it's so wonderful, isn't it, to be in with like-minded people. But one of my greatest challenges is the fact that I work out in the trenches with a whole lot of people who don't think like me. And that's what's been so much fun. And also something that I would encourage you to do when you're taking that deep breath and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you, of all people, did that. Anybody experienced that over the last couple of years? Family, friends, churches, spiritual groups, book clubs, you name it. We've all had to go through this amazing space where we had to practice what we actually preach. Yeah, but I can't believe you did that. Now your DNA is altered. And what business is it of yours? Right? You have a choice to stand your ground. You have a choice to be who you are. You have a choice to support what supports you in your story. And so do they. But guess what? These people forgot and these people forgot. And it was like the clash of the titans here. And so I saw some really super spiritual people acting like a-holes. And I'm sure you did too. So we've been given this tremendous opportunity to really practice what we preach. Be who and what we are. And guess what that is? A divine, omnipotent, eternal, incredibly beautiful being that came into a meat suit, who will also have the opportunity to wake up freshly dead the same way that I did and look back and go, wasn't that a trip? And so I think one of the greatest things that happens when you go through a death and come back into this same body, because who in here can remember a past life experience? Yeah, well, guess what? That happened in a different body, right? Imagine having a same life experience where you're like, oh, I remember who I was before that happened. And then you come back in and you're this whole different person. Now, remember, the world around you didn't change. You're coming back in completely transformed. And that's the fun stuff. That's the kicker. And people spend so much time trying to change the world around them. You know, let's make this world a better place. No, you be better in this amazingly perfect, holographic example of what it means to be an earthbound human being, right? You get the chance to come in here and be incredible. And what I find with so many people, in their journeys, as their own journeys unfold, is that as they're trying to change the world around them, I kind of liken it to someone who wants to learn how to cook goes to the gates of Harvard. Let me in. I want to come learn how to cook. I'm sorry, we don't teach cooking here. We teach law. Well, that's not fair. I should be able to learn how to cook anywhere I want to. But this place is set up to teach law. Well, you need to change that, because it is my right to learn how to cook wherever I want to. And it is comical. Once you have that kind of realization and you come back and you watch people who are just fighting for everything, and you sit back having been dead and you're looking at this going, just enjoy the ride. Just enjoy the ride. You can get angry at folks, and you can fight for causes, and we're all just try to be good. Just try to be a nice person. Because guess what? You might be doing something that individual has a real problem with. Right? All of us, you might use a substance that this person has a problem with. You might do something, you might send your child to college, and this person might go, well, I can't afford to send mine to college, therefore you shouldn't be sending yours to college. I hear that all the time. People are acting in this amazing, crazy way, and that's what I love about this place. And that's why I chose to come back. I chose to come back. Nobody made me come back here. Let me make that crystal clear. Because I have also been on the circuit with people who speak about the death experience, and they say, oh gosh, I got there, and then I was just like, oh yeah, I don't want to go back. It's so beautiful here. It's amazing. I was like, woohoo, this is great. I'm going in. Put me back in, coach. And I really wanted to be back here because I now had this different understanding, and I actually like this character. It's like, watching a movie and you've really taken a liking to this particular character. Well, I like me. I'm weird, I'm quirky, I'm crooked, sometimes I'm funny. I wanted to go back in with that knowledge in this body under those circumstances with that family. How fun was that? So imagine the crack, as we say in Ireland. Imagine the crack that we had going back in. And my mom she got it all along. But imagine my dad having to learn how to deal with me. It was amazing. It was amazing. He simultaneously loved me dearly, and I irked him to death. And we grew together. And I got the chance to do that because I could tell him some things that were very difficult for him to work with inside of his box. But guess what else I learned from being dead? You know how we kind of knock the box? I'm so out of the box. As if that's a more evolved way to be, you're in the box. You're in the box, it's in the box thinking, I'm out of the box. Well, I found out when I was dead that those boxes are actually of our own creation, and they're very necessary. And the boxes are a really fun part about being human. And you get to go into this box, and you get to experience this, and you get to, it's like a spinning plate, and you get to avail of everything that's on that plate. And then when you're done, you get to leave this box, and you get to go into this one. And there's an infinite number of boxes. It's really amazing how this plane is set up. The spoiler here is that we get to go back somewhere where you are completely connected and whole and amazing. Enjoy this. You get this for this little bitty bit of time. That's it. Mom's made it 93 years so far, do you know? And that's nothing. Absolutely nothing, but she's making the most of it. And so this is what I encourage you to do if you learn anything about interacting with someone who's been dead and came back to tell the tale, is do all of it. Whatever it is that you feel like you can do, do that. Whatever you feel like makes you really uncomfortable, go do that especially. Because you already are that which you seek. People come to the places like this and this beautiful Mecca, this energy, this, they're coming to seek out this beautiful spiritual. They're coming in here to dump all their stuff. I saw it. They're coming in here with all that baggage, all that stuff, and they're coming and hoping that energy is going to light them up, and it's going to transform their lives. They already are that. That's what they don't understand. You already are that which you seek. You came here not to be that for just a little while. This is forever. This is just a little tiny bit of time. And this takes me to the place where I learned all about judgment. Because, imagine this. You're watching that 360-degree view of your own life where, I'm visiting the elders in the nursing home, and then I'm shouting at little Amy Wheeler, who's walking down the aisle when she receives Jesus as her Lord and Savior at 12 years old in the First Baptist Church in Martinsville, Virginia, and I'm on the back pew. She's doing it for the juice and the bread. I was that kid. And it's like this idea that we were supposed to be perfectly perfect in every way. Well, you already are. This idea of judgment where you're like, that person is horrible, they did this. And I'm like, yeah, but if they weren't, they couldn't be the bad guy in your story, and you wouldn't get the chance to work with that. It was like I had an issue with my daughter's principal when she was 12 years old, and it was bad. It was a very, very serious situation. And I remember thinking to myself, I could actually decimate this person, or I could write a book and talk about this and explain the concept of how this woman's family adores her. My own doctor is her next door neighbor and thinks she's the cat's meow. But she was the devil incarnate in my child's life. So which one is she? She's all of them. Because you, every one of you is going to be the bad guy in somebody's story. And you've got no control over that because that's what you came to give them. But that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you're a baddie in that story. And you can believe you could have been the best in the world. And somebody's going to make up a story where you're not. That's the beauty of living here. So the big cosmic ha-ha about being in the meat suit and being on the earth plane is that we get so caught up in trying to learn this and do this and do this, and we forget to just be present and enjoy. And here's what's so amazing about frequency and love and light and energy, right? Here I am sitting with you. How does concurrent reality work? Well, here's my past over here, right? Here's my future over here. This one hasn't happened yet. This one's old news. And here I am right now. I am a product of all of those things, and I am creating this as I move along. And we all go, yes, we get that. We know that. I meditated on that for a week down by the lake. But then when it comes to actually implementing this into one's lifestyle, do you want to know what Mary did? Yeah, we still get caught up in it. And that is the funny and fun part about being human beings. But the best part now, and oh my gosh, the trip that I am having with my own mother. Imagine 3 in a car. It's the mother, it's the daughter, and then it's my daughter. And it's like, talk about living reality right there, concurrent past, future. And I'm watching, and I'm listening to the things, and my mom will say something, and then she will just die laughing. And she's like, I don't even know why I said that. Because it's something that she might not have had any information about. She actually didn't know anything about, but she spoke. And I was like, Mom, I love that conviction, because she spoke like it was the actual God's honest truth. And then she turns around and goes, I don't even know why I said that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I do that. And then my daughter is watching going, I'm not doing that. That's weird. What is that? But that's us unraveling patterns and unraveling behaviors and unraveling our family tree. And it's so much fun. It is so much fun to put up your hand and go, yep, I did that. I messed up. Instead of trying to make up an excuse or make up a story as to why you didn't mess up. Because we have this idea that we have to be so evolved and so perfect. You already are evolved. You already are all of that. You came here to be a thug. You came here to be a friend. You came here to be a party animal. You came here to be super straight-laced. You came here to be whatever it is you came here to be. And it is so funny how we get these notions about who and what we're supposed to be. And so if I could tell you anything from having been dead and choosing to come back into the body, be present. And I know we hear that all the time, but I mean really be present. Really be present. If it's something that you have to think about and you're like, I really shouldn't do that, do it. Because guess what's going to happen? When you die, when you go out of the body, you're still getting in. Oh no, but that couldn't be the case for this one. Guess what? That one's going to the same place as you are, but that couldn't be the case because I came in with this checklist of what it means to be spiritually evolved and get into this place. No, it's everybody. Everybody's going. Everybody gets back. Spoiler, surprise. But I get this one every time. Someone's always going to bring up a pedophile. Someone's always going to bring up child abuse. Someone's always going to bring up sexual abuse. Someone's always going to bring up Hitler. It always happens. And so I say the same thing every single time. There are some people who are going to play the bad guy. There are some people who are going to play the good guy. There are some people who are going to play both simultaneously. And that's everybody. So while it's very difficult for you to get your head around, would you want something to happen to a child? No. That's your conscious, evolved brain kicking into action going, this is horrible. But if a soul who's coming from that divine, omnipotent, eternal, loving, forever space wants to come in here and experience something, who are you to judge that experience? Because someone's got to make it happen. So when we speak of the dichotomy of dark and light and how this earth plane actually works, there are individuals in place who are here to help you fulfill your wildest dreams. And your wildest dreams aren't necessarily always the feel-good ones. Hear me when I say this. You didn't come here for the dog, the house, the white picket fence, and the perfect marriage. Because that would be the normal, wouldn't it? That's an hour. This is where I do a little dance. Thank you. So, that's really the most important messages I can relay from that. So when I left that space and came back into this body, boy, did the adventures begin. Because I had to learn a whole new way of living. I had to reinvent everything that I thought was true. I had to understand how this world works and still live in it with a lot of people who didn't. And that has been the biggest challenge, because sometimes you just want to shake them. Come on. And then I have to step back and go, what are you doing? Just smile and be helpful. Smile and be helpful. Smile and be helpful. And that's been the biggest challenge, because we think it's our job to educate everybody into our level of spirituality. No, it's not. And as a doctor who's been in working in this last 2 years, and I'm watching people come in, and first it was all the fear. And they were making choices, and I just sat there and I cringed, and I would go home sick to my stomach. And I would be like, don't do it. Don't do it. And then I'm like, who am I to tell them don't do it? That's your journey. I can give you this information. I can educate you. I can explain to you exactly what it is from my perspective. But that's just my perspective. I can show up. Then they come in later, and this has been this last year. I really regret what's happened. Look what's happened. I got this thing growing on my neck, or I've got heart problems now, or I've got this or that. And I sit, not in judgment. I judge behind the scenes, I'd have to be honest with you. No, it's really hard. And you sit there, and this has been for me. It's all about me. And in your story and in your life, it's all about you. And I realize as I sit there and I am struggling and I'm so conflicted and I'm heartbroken for some of the choices that people made, that's why I'm still here. That's why I came back. I'm still learning. And that's what's so important when you get so frustrated and you get so fed up with people and you're like, how could you do this? I thought, how could you do that to your, oh my gosh. None of your beeswax. Here's the big takeaway from my talk tonight. None of your beeswax. And it's hard. It is so hard to be loving and supportive of someone who is on a different journey than you. And that's why I came back in at the age of 21. That's why I went from a career in art, and the dead grandfather, my mother's father, Judge, sends me back to school. I just graduated, and he was like, and he always talked like we're sending you back, and you're going to go become a chiropractor. I was like, a what? I didn't even know what that was. I was like, isn't that the ones they make fun of? I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I just finished. I'm not going back to school. And back to school I went. And didn't I find out that the reason that he sent me there was because of the vitalistic philosophy, the mind, body, spirit, that all of them work together, that they're intricately connected and one doesn't function without the other, and that I was going to spend the rest of my life teaching people as someone who had been dead and come back into the body, that the body is actually here to serve every single thing you need. Every pain, every ache, every emotion, every hardship, every judgment, every loving thing you do, it's here to serve you. And that it's designed to let you know when you're even slightly off kilter. And I got to come back into a world that was controlled by pharmaceuticals, where people were looking for the quick fix and all. It's a playground. It's perfectly perfect when you're learning that that's truth. Where am I going to go? The same place where everybody thinks exactly like me? No, I'm going to come back into a place where people have been indoctrinated, where people are really struggling, where they get, I take the odd tablet. Yeah, okay, that's good. And the only way I learned that was by going to a place where the philosophy was mind, body, and spirit, where I would become a metaphysician. And so fast forward to now, and I am the first metaphysician in Ireland, in the state of Ireland, to be paid by the state. I'm really proud of that. And I'm working with this girl in this amazing case that is going to burst the infrastructure of the justice system from the inside out. and they're paying me to do it because the crime was so severe that they allowed her to choose her practitioner. And she went back and, you all said anybody I wanted. And here she dragged me up like a cat with a mouse and left me at their door. Hi. Well, we need 3 people who practice like you. 3 people who died when they were 21 and came back with these weird healing powers? Okay, leave that with me. But she's getting better and better and better, and her life is changing, and her direction is changing, and everything that she's doing is in service to people who've been through the same experience that she has. Oh, it's amazing. Her understanding of frequency, vibration, and how to make that available to people suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder who've been through experiences similar to hers. Oh my gosh, it's incredible. And how amazing it is to be from the inside out changing a system. Do you know? That system was in place, though, in order to create her. And then she became an agent of change. And if that system hadn't been broken, we'd have no story to share. So appreciate the stuff in your life that doesn't seem to be working out so well. Appreciate the opportunities where someone's being really nasty to you. That happened to me actually earlier today. And I was like, oh, I could feel my cockles getting up. And I stopped myself and I went, really? I was getting ready to act like an idiot. And I stopped myself. One of the perks of being dead, do you know? Because guess who was judging when I was in that space? I'm like, I grew up in Bible school and Sunday school, and I'm like looking around for the guy in the robe with the white beard, the gavel, the lambs, the throne. And I'm like, it's just me and the guides. Oh my gosh, I'm the one judging this. I was critiquing my own performance, and that has stuck with me. And so what I do now, instead of having to die and come back in, because that can be a little traumatic, and I'm getting a little older, so it's a little harder on the body. So instead of having to do that, I have these little micro moments where an opportunity presents itself, and I go through the whole review just like this. Do I really want to watch that again? No. Show up. Be kind. This person is, show up. Be kind. Yeah, but show up and be kind. And then talk to my mother about it later. It's got to come out somewhere, and that's okay. You didn't fail just because you had an emotional response to something. Your job as a human being is to be a human being, not to be some kind of perfectly perfect, patchouli smelling, grubby in the hands, dirt kind of, because that person's going to get into heaven. But the corporate guy in the suit who's creating all of the trauma and nightmare that a lot of people are experiencing right now, he's going too. Your job is to be perfectly perfect just as you are as a human being, with all of the mess ups and all of your imperfections. Enjoy those things. Make the bad choices. Because when you exit this body, you're going back into a space where you're going to go, oh yeah. And when you're looking at your life review and you're going, oh gosh, all you get to see is exactly how it played out, that choice that you made. And guess what? The really nice, good choices that I made were just as important as the really bad choices that I made, were just as important as the mediocre choices I made or the choices that I didn't make, where I just stood there and let stuff happen. It all counted. All of it mattered. All of it was equally important. And so if I can leave you with that one thing, you already are that which you seek. So go have fun being this. Give it your all. Have a ball. Take the trip. If you've got someone in your life, go grab them, throw them in the car, go on a road trip, have a good time. Sit an elder down and have a cup of tea and ask them what it was like, because they're not going to be here forever. Neither are you. So it's not like you're cheating them out of the experience. You're cheating you out of the experience. Remember that. So go out there and be everything, do everything, love everything, get angry, have fun, be sad, do all of the things that you can only do as a human being, because it's such a gift. And it's a gift that you gave yourself, because you are the creator of your own story. So if anybody has any questions, I think we've got a few minutes.
We do have a few minutes. So does anybody have any questions?
I've never finished early, ever. I want you to mark this moment right now in history.
You're not done yet.
Somebody ask a really long one so I can go overtime.
Hi, you spoke of when you saw your life review and how you were seeing it all multidimensionally. Has that come back?
And seeing what? Sorry.
Multidimensionally, you were seeing everything at once.
Yes.
Has that come back with you now?
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. What he's asking about is seeing that multidimensional reality. Had that come back in now? Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like, do you ever see something you're like, oh my gosh, I can't unsee that. I can't unsee or unfeel or unknow that multidimensional reality. And it's that, it's my hope that I can share this message with people and they don't have to die. Everybody thinks I'm so enlightened because I had a near-death experience. I'm the clot who didn't figure it out and had to go die and come back in. That's how enlightened I was. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Did you say that we are gods? Are we God?
I didn't say that, but I meant to.
Yeah.
I hope I implied that. Did I imply that? We're creating, yeah, absolutely. Do you know? Yes. And guess what heaven is? It's a feeling. It's a frequency. Do you know? It's that buzz. It's not a destination. It's not like you stop at Grand Central Station and you're out in the field. It can be, because guess why? You're creating your reality as you go, not just in this body, but in every body. And how is God in many places all at once? Because there's 8 billion versions on this planet alone of you. I saw another hand there. Yes.
So when you experience all these dimensions at the same time, how does it not drive you nuts? How come? I mean, I would go.
I thought I was nuts.
No, but you don't have an anchor or something, or something,
You know what? We were in Bath. I can't even remember what day it was. Yesterday, the day before, and we met. Do you know when you see somebody and I'm like, oh, if I was British and I lived in Bath, that's me. Because this girl walks up and she's wearing my Pluto. Remember Pluto. It was a T-shirt that I have, commemorating the fact that Pluto got busted down from planet status, and it was a funny T-shirt. And this girl had on the same T-shirt. And I was like, oh, she kind of looks like me. And then she was carrying this box of acrylic paints, and I was like, oh, I just painted my front desk with acrylics. And so we start chatting, and we're like actually quite alike. And so standing over here was her brother. And her brother, she said, this is my brother, and I've been taking care of him, and he's schizophrenic. And I was like, rock on, dude, rock on. I have the deepest respect for people who have gone through psychosis, people who have gone through schizophrenia, people who have gone through any number of mental illnesses, because here's what happens in this very weird allopathic world that we are dominated by at the moment. We make them the bad guys. They're the crazies. And I'm like, you're going to see very soon that it's going to flip. It's the other way around. And so what's happening is they're just more expressive of the fact that they are seeing, experiencing, feeling multiple realities simultaneously. Well, we don't like that because it makes us uncomfortable, right? But that world is changing, and that understanding. So, that definition of nuts, yeah, it's getting a bit broader. And so, yeah, I think that I've been speaking to the dead for so long that I think that I would go nuts if I didn't. The dead grandfather has been a part of my daily life, my whole life. And if I woke up and he wasn't there, I'm like, I'm out of here. It's over. It's done. You know, so it's all what your version of reality actually is, what your version of nuts, what your version of connect. Like, I've got patients who come into me who are literally 24/7 in an altered reality than what you and I might consider normal. And I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like, tell me all about it. And they're like, you're the only person who ever asked. I'm like, I know, because I've been there. I want to see it. I want to hear what you're saying. And they're having a completely different experience, and the body is there to serve. I had a patient many years ago who came in. He was from England, really, really funny guy. And the first time I ever met him, he rolls up in his vehicle, and he's wearing a tweed jacket, and he's got the cravat, do you know? And he's like dressed to the nines, and he has paper under his arm, and he walks in, and he was amazing. And I was like, it's so nice to meet you. And so I'm checking his spine, I'm jotting down what his misalignments are, blah, blah, blah. Well, 2 days later, this guy rocks up on a Harley. He's wearing leathers from head to toe. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I met your twin brother the other day. It weren't his twin, fellas, right? It was him. And he was in a moment where he was the guy who rides the Harley. I was like, come on in. This is great. Come on in. He got down on the table, and I start checking his spine, and guess what? None of the misalignments were the same. He had a completely different physical pattern. He was living a completely different experience. He was getting a 2-for-1, right? So who am I to call him crazy? He's just having a different experience. The amount of people that I know who've gone through psychosis and made it back, I'm like, you were on the precipice right here. And you almost went in, but you didn't. What was that like? And then rather than being made to feel crazy, they're like, yeah, I rock. I survived that. I'm like, yes, you did. I'm not the same. My family says I'm not the same. They said I'm not the same. And I'm like, how could you be the same? Why would you want to be the same? You survived a psychosis. You're able to talk about this and well, you know what? It's not really mainstream, I'm not really. Change it then. Change the narrative. And so I'm watching this happen. These kids came into my office to get adjusted the other day with their nan. And the child walks up, and she's got a sloth, a teddy with long arms and long legs, and it's wearing a crash helmet. And you know that moment when you're standing there going, there's either a camera rolling, and I'm like, can anybody else see what's happening here? Because this is hilarious, right? And I'm like, deadpan. Yes. And it was wearing a pink dress with a green tutu. And she's standing there, and it's got the helmet on, holding it. And she's like, this is Jonathan. And I went, well, hello, Jonathan. And she lays Jonathan down on the table, and Jonathan's in his little dress and wearing his little crash test helmet. And she's like, be careful. And I'm like, well, will I adjust Jonathan with the helmet on or off? And she goes, we'll probably leave it on, because he's autistic. And I'm like, okay, right. So I adjusted Jonathan. Now, someone could walk in. Imagine if I was in America and the accreditation board comes in. And I'm wearing "Remember Pluto" on my T-shirt, adjusting Jonathan with the crash helmet on in the pink tutu. Who's crazy, me or the child? Hello, I think it's me they're carting off, right? But in that moment, this was our reality, and this was the reality that we created. And so now here's her cousin standing with Cupcake. And I'm like, look at Cupcake. Wow. And so she's like, Cupcake needs to be adjusted as well. And I said, okay. So down Cupcake goes, and I went, are Cupcake's shoes on the wrong feet? And she goes, duh. And I was like, oh. She goes, Cupcake has a club foot. And I was just like, and the nan is looking at me, and she's just ready to pass out. And I'm like, okay, that was really smart move. Yeah, putting the shoes on the opposite feet to turn the foot out. Well done, you, right? So who's crazy? Is it me? Is it the nan? Is it Cupcake? So crazy is as crazy does, as crazy what you call it, So living in that world of altered reality, like, I have a really good time. I get paid to go places and talk about this. Who's crazy, me or them? I've written 10 books about this, right? Simon & Schuster got my books. Who's crazy, me or them? It's all about how you define crazy. Because if someone approaches a situation and they're like I have a cousin who's a white witch in the hills, and she's amazing. She's a toner, she's amazing, but she won't get out there and do it because she's like, well, you don't live here. I'm like, I grew up there. What are you talking about? Yeah, but people won't accept this. And of course they will. You won't accept it. Right? So she's created the world that she expects, and yours truly has created the world that she expects. I go out every single day, and I know something amazing is going to happen. Every single day. Now, some people might call that crazy. I expect crazy. I'm disappointed at night if crazy didn't happen. And so that has become a normal part of my reality. And so I am able to go and talk. I'm a doctor. And I talk to people about dead people, and I'm like, sorry, I can't do this right now. And I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to their dead grandmother in the corner. I'm going, I only do that on Tuesdays, right? And that's my crazy world. And so I am loving every single minute of it. That's where I live. I live in Crazy Town. And I am having so much fun there. And so I encourage people to add a little more crazy into their life, because it then redefines the definition of what we call reality. I live in the same world that everybody else does. I went through the same pandemic that everybody else did. I was exposed to the same virus. I had my hands on people all day, every day, never wore a mask, wasn't vaccinated, and I'm healthy as a horse. Now, I could drop dead tomorrow of something else, but I've got my monkeypox soup at home, and I've got my banana handbag, and I'm like, yesterday morning, I was like, there was talk that they're reviving the pox. I'm excited, because I'm ready for it. Call me crazy, but I've got to live in this world, and I have to live in this world after having been dead and come back in. So a little bit of crazy, a little bit of altered reality, yeah. I couldn't live without it, to be honest. Yeah.
We have 4 minutes left. One last question.
Yes,
Lady
ma'am.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hi. I was just wondering, what is your thoughts on things like walk-ins and soul exchange? Do you know when people have sort of like passed and other spirits coming into the body and exchange?
Are you asking, do I think this is real? Does this
Yeah.
actually? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. I have seen it all. I can literally say, guys, I've seen it all. And the best part is when somebody is talking to me and they're like, yeah, I had a, my mom said I flatlined on the table, but nothing ever happened. And they had these like 2 glaring heart chakras. And I'm like, you've been dead. And they're like, no, I haven't. I don't remember anything. And I'm like, wait, you just wait. Just because they haven't stepped into that understanding or knowing doesn't mean it's not coming. Little did I know, at 21, bam, everything was going to change. So yeah, it's real. I've seen it. I know them. I've met them. I've been listening. I was listening to all these amazing talks today, and I'm like, my life has been so weird. Oh my gosh, it has been so weird. I have photograph after photograph. I'm so lucky I have my friend Rob back there. And Rob was a speaker at this symposium many moons ago. And when I wake up and I have a new mark on my body, I'm like, look, Rob. And he's like, I know, I have the same one. And so I've had markings. I've had so many visits. I have seen so many things. We have an interesting family member who spent his entire career working in Area 51. That's right. We'll talk about that on the next go. So have I seen them? Have I been there? Yes. Are they real? Sure. Are we waiting for them to come? No. They've been here a really long time. Some of them are sitting right next to you. I won't start pointing fingers, but I could. No. So yes, and yes. It's all around you. And everything that you heard today, everything that you've seen today, oh my gosh, is it real? Yes. Are some of them aliens, ETs, extraterrestrials? Yes. Are some of them interdimensional beings? Yes. It's all of it. And what's happening is we're finally unfolding into this really fun space. And they're like, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. I'm like, are you kidding? Do Do you guys know how long this place has been here? Nothing's coming to an end. If anything, we might see another species extinction, where it's like shaking a dog, shaking fleas off, Mother Earth wins every time, So don't think that anything is coming to a close. What's happening is it's so much fun. So if you can approach the next wild bit that's coming up with excitement and with gratitude and with joy, as opposed to going, oh my God, we all know this is crazy. You don't need to keep saying it. You don't need to post it on Facebook. You don't need to. We all know. And we all know that there are some people who don't see that. We know. Do you know? What are you doing about it? What are you doing with it? You're sitting down there and you're the keyboard warrior, or you can be like me. I drove across Route 66 in a pandemic with my children to show them that they could. Right? I wear a monkey suit to work. My office manager was dressed like a leprechaun for no real reason last week. That's what we do. That's how you create a reality that includes their nonsense. Rather than trying to break it all down and you're exhausted and you die. The best thing that ever happened to me, one of the other perks of my grandfather Judge was he actually worked with a man called Edgar Casey. And, dude, that would get you. I was saving that one for last. And which was amazing. He used to consult with Casey. Well, they both died at age 66. My grandfather came back from rounds, and he was a healer. So surprise, surprise that he became my guide after the accident, right? When I'd be healing and working with frequency and using the strange stuff that came through my hands. Well, he, as a 15-year-old, met Edgar Casey on the road and asked him about what was happening. And then when he went off and became a doctor, he ended up consulting with him. Isn't that wild? So crazy. And I came from Virginia, right there. And I did everything I could as a wild teenager to get out of there. And I was like from the Mecca of metaphysical healing. And so, you have these stories that come into your life that are almost too good to be true. And it's like, what are you going to do with that? Do you know, what are you actually going to do with that? And Edgar Casey, was a big part of our story and our life, and I've launched books there and done all this, and he was 66 years old. And Mom and I were going through the Edgar Casey, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, and here's what happened. My grandfather Judge died when I was 1 year old. He'd come from the rounds in the hospital from healing and dropped dead of a heart attack on the threshold. And the tour guide snuck us in, and he goes, lift the cover. This is where Casey did his 14,000 readings. And you know what I saw, guys? This tattered, threadbare, dirty couch. And I went, and it was a life-changing moment, as big as the accident. And I went, you know what? I can live in service and not die like that. There's no glory. You're not more evolved. You don't get a closer spot to God when you get to heaven if you wore yourself out trying to heal people. Like, come on. Be true to you and be a good person. That's it. That's all you got to do. You don't have to wear yourself out. You don't have to drop dead in the work. I'm a steward to humanity, but I'm also a mom. I'm also a chiropractor. I also love to paint. I love road trips. I'm all of those things. Don't just be the one thing. Because when you get stuck on one thing and that hamster is spinning that wheel, that's where you're going to die. You're going to get stuck in that space and you're going to die of that affliction, which is over-service. Because there's such a thing, believe it or not. And if you're not having fun, do it. I'm like, really? Eat the cake. Right?
Close, I'm afraid. Ladies and gentlemen, Mary Helen Hensley.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.